But before I begin the PowerPoint, I want to share the opening introduction. So what if something that we all take for granted is far more powerful than we realize? Not rare, not hidden, but something that's surrounding our lives constantly, right under our nose, around us all the time. What if music is not only entertainment, not just something to relax us, distract us, or fill space, or change our moods, or remind us of days gone by, but a kind of human technology that can influence how we feel, how we think, how we relate, and ultimately who we become. You know, we are living in an unprecedented time of stimulation. Our attention spans are fragmented, our nervous systems are overwhelmed, and even with all of our intelligence, something clearly isn't working. We're not lacking information or solutions, we're lacking coherence. And that coherence can only be achieved with the integration of our other forms of intelligence. And we all know the Cartesian phrase, I think, therefore I am. It could be one of the most damaging, even though I found out recently, Descartes was a phenomenal philosopher, but unfortunately he's been defined mistakenly by this horrible statement, I think, therefore I am. How reductionist can you get, right? But all of our intelligences deserve full and equal balance and airtime with our linear rational mind. And we've been taken hostage by the belief that our linear rational mind is the only way we'll get out of this. How's that working for us these days? How's that working for you? It's not working for me that much as a musician, I can tell you. So after 40 years of working with creating music, I've come to believe when carefully designed for the purposes you're about to see that I've devoted my life to, and I've just scratched the surface. So please believe me, this is a kind of an invitation for collaboration around how can we use all the art forms for these systems. I'm just one person using music in the way that I'm drawn to, frankly, because of my own compensatory strategies for the woundings that I received before I could even speak, right? These are guided by my need to heal, but I'm just one person. I want to open this world for arts being utilized to reclaim our multiple intelligences. But I've come to believe that when we use these systems, these art forms, they're underutilized tools for restoring that integration and that coherence that I'm talking about. Not by replacing our linear rational minds. This is what I say in my TEDx talk, but by harmonizing the intelligence of the heart, which is the gateway and the center in which the rivers of spirit, soul, energy, intuition, and all the human capacities that AI will never be able to replicate live in the heart, right? So all those human qualities are actually in the wisdom of the heart. So if we can harmonize the heart with our linear rational minds and allow art to play that role, that's what my life's devoted to, harmonizing those intelligences. So most of all, if we can use the universal language of human emotion, music, to allow our hearts to crack open so that we can learn our authentic vulnerability is the gateway and the currency and the catalyst for true transformation. And I dare AI to be vulnerable in a way that will move us, okay? So now I'm going to be in my PowerPoint. That's what we're going to talk about today. And it's a great pleasure, and I'm excited, and thank you so much again. And let's go on this journey together. All right. I just want to make a dedication. My longtime creative partner with whom I created the work that I'm most known for, other than the fact that I was the guy that created all the music for the television show called Unsolved Mysteries from 1985 to 2002. I'm well known for that. Actually, not well known, but you might not know that about me. But this is the work that I'm most proud of being known for, called Graceful Passages. And Michael, literally, his heart stopped without any notice on February 15th. And we're all in shock, and we're going to be doing celebrations of life in Germany and in other places around the world. But I just want to honor that I never would have taken the turn away from Hollywood to create a greater good work that has touched more than 1 million people around the world in reframing death, dying, and loss if it weren't for this man. So I want to give a homage to him and a tribute. This talk is dedicated to Michael. So just soak in this experience. Music has been with us since time began for human beings. For nurturing children, fertility rites, for celebration. For joy and connection and beauty. For passing the time. For celebration. For ritual and ceremony and connecting to spirit as only music can. For sound healing way long ago. And now today. And for being in a group together, dancing, celebrating, feeling joy. Or at an amazing festival just all around the world, the way we convene and commune. Yeah, sorry for the abrupt stop. So I just want this moment for you to just close your eyes for a second and just scan your being. Just feel like you're probing your body, your heart, your mind, your soul, and just get a check for where you are right now, because we're going to go on a ride together. And how can we really evaluate where we're going and what the effect of this practice is if we don't notice where we are now? Are you connected to your heart? Are you in your head, which is what most people are required to be in this culture 90% of the time? So just take a scan shot of where you are, and we'll resume now. And I'd like you, for those in the Zoom, feel free to actually write the word, one word that would describe how you're feeling at this moment. And just that way there could be an interaction. We don't have that for the live, but so forgive me on that. But let's go back to my PowerPoint and let's just, this is meant to be not a passive experience. This is an interaction. All right? Okay, back to the. So I'm going to share a movie that HeartMath, many of you might know HeartMath Institute, have been made great strides for the last 30, 40 years. And really, frankly, without HeartMath, so many other ways in which I can make my point that I'll be making today. Really, I owe it to them for proving the heart brain and the heart rate variability concept. So check it out if you don't know what HeartMath is, because they're real pioneers in understanding the neurocardiology world. And I want you to look at this next film. It's about a minute, but it's not only literally a film that shows you the power of film scoring and how different you can view things with a different musical score, but it's also a metaphor. And just for imagine the music you're hearing to this visual is that the metaphor is your nervous system. And imagine if your nervous system was like this soundtrack, and how do you think your reality would be perceived? Check it out. You see the world through how you feel. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And normally when I do this in live scenarios, I ask, please raise your hand if you think the first half and the second half from an editing video perspective are different or the same. And maybe someone in the room could just tell me how many people thought that the visuals for the first half were the same as the second. And I always like knowing that, and I can't see you that well. So most people believe that they're different because of the music, of course. But what if the musical soundtrack, if it were the metaphor for our nervous system, how would we be experiencing life? As a chaotic, incoherent experience of overwhelming neurological overload, or an experience of ease, grace, and flow, and the definition of coherence? What we're going to be talking about today is how, as a film composer, I've been scoring film, TV, and commercials and video games for 40 years, music changes how we feel. And when we integrate it into our culture and our gatherings in unique ways, it can change outcomes in a dramatic way. So we see the world through how we feel, and how we feel directly impacts our lives. Pretty clear. Okay. So now I want you to soak in your cognitive ability with reading, listening, and allowing yourself to be moved by the content. Breathe. Feet on the ground. Inhabit yourself. Mitochondrial regenesis. Emoto's water crystals. Biocymatics. That's our bodies, water in our bodies. We're hearing music. Is it generative or destructive? Music is the sound of life celebrating itself. So as you take in, did you notice where the music played a role in helping you relax as you used your mind to read and absorb the concepts? This is one of the first steps in understanding the nuance of how music can assist our metabolizing ideas in a way that gets closer to harmonizing our heart with our mind's ability to intellectually absorb things. I wish I could see you in the room and ask, does that make sense? But for me, it's important to titrate towards the harmonization, to explore what does it really mean to harmonize our heart with our mind's capacity. Because when we slow down, just slowing down is the path towards harmonizing our heart and mind. It's the reason why we all go to breath, right? But breath is wonderful, but it lacks the thing that John O'Donohue says, the wonderful mystic, the silent embrace of music, of beauty. And that's why music, it's got us in the details with music, because it's not just any music, it's music that's generated with an intent to awaken, heal, and align and create coherence. That's what I'm interested in. Now, this is me. I just thought I wasn't going to throw this in, but at the last minute, I just wanted you to know that this was when I was 7 playing at my brother's bar mitzvah. But at 5 years old, my mother found me waiting for her from a play date. And the story goes that she watched me sit at the piano. I'd never seen it before. And I instantly started playing melody and harmony as if I'd been there. All I can tell you is what I remember at 5, when I first touched the piano. The closest analogy I could describe is when Dorothy walked out of the black and white image of the tornado-spewn house into the land of Oz. And I felt for the first time the presence I hungered for that didn't exist anywhere in my family life. In fact, most of my childhood, from the moment I started playing piano, no one could be present enough to listen to more than 10 seconds of the creations that were coming out of me almost instantaneously at 5 years old. And I didn't realize, but I felt very heartbroken and dejected that there was no one there that cared about my music, which is why I had to be so famous and get Emmys and stuff where I think I'd die. Of course, we're working through that one now, but that's me. And then just to summarize, from 1980 to roughly 2000, I created music for over 1,000 commercials, over 100 documentaries, as I said, on Self Mysteries and other television, and many socially responsible documentaries. And in fact, that was the epiphany that planted the seed for my mission to create music for the greater good. But that when I did music for raising money for AIDS or the environment, that's when I was happiest, which was the clue to how to me, that how I'm made up is I'm wired to be a bridge builder to the good. That's what I learned about me. So that's me, just so you understand background. But then I had a fall, a serious bicycle accident. And I talk about it in my TEDx talk, where everything was shattered, including my left hand. Didn't know if I'd ever play the piano again. And I had a period of time where I lost my wife, my marriage, my family, my company. 1998, summer of 1998, it was the summer of Job for me. And we all know this. We've heard the stories that our awakening to who we really are and what our path is has to sometimes come through 2x4 technology. Don't try this at home kind of stuff. It was a very brutal time. And I went through such horrific isolation and fear because I didn't know if I'd ever play the piano again. Check out my TEDx talk, and maybe I'll pass along the link at some point. But out of the death of that process, Michael Stillwater invited me to create and support people who are going through the end of life. And that's why I'm sitting right here before you, that process of creating that work. But one of the things I learned during the period when I was convalescing hanging, I had ribs shattered and jaw and facial bones shattered. It was a bad experience. What I really started learning was, as a Gemini, I think a lot. And many of us do. And I realized the rational mind alone is not going to solve my problem. Clearly, I was being invited to another form of intelligence. And I was so focused on external success and money and prosperity and getting the world to see me as somebody important. But I couldn't figure out how to get out of this. I was really dejected. And now just talk about what we're all going through as a culture right now. the level of stacking grief and pain and suffering and violence is getting to such a saturation point, as we all know. But we live in a culture that avoids illness and old age and dying, and we rarely have the technology or the sensitivity or the willingness or the courage to figure out what recovery time really means. And I wish I could see your faces, because right now there's such a poignancy and a helplessness to watching wars and destruction happening at such a reckless level. Excuse me. So this we all know, but what are we going to do about this constantly distracted, increasingly isolated, seriously overwhelmed? When you walk down the street and everyone's absorbed in their phones, Alone Together is that name of that book, I think. What are we going to do about this? So we all know this. The result is that we turn to addictions, and we do what I've done, which is my greatest challenge in the past, which is over-engaging in external stimuli and avoiding my internal capacity to access the field of unity. Just feel that for a minute. Most of us are trained, if we probably at IONS, the audience, you guys are much more tuned to the internal world of the unified field, which is everywhere around us, and it's basically all of that is. But most of the world turns to addictions and to external stimuli. And that's a problem. That's a challenge. That's creating the world we're experiencing today. And I've created a term because I thought, here I speak a lot to healthcare conferences because of the success of the work that I created with Michael and Doris Stillwater called Graceful Passages. And I figured I'd make myself sound like a doctor, because maybe people will take it more seriously. And I called it awareness fragmentation disorder. But I do really believe there's something here, and everything at my work for the last 25 years is leading me to the conclusion that heart coherence is one form of coherence, but coherence at every level, vibrational coherence, which is what I call resonance, the field of resonance, the coherence on the largest scale possible, or the most intimate on a cellular level, is the opposite of awareness fragmentation disorder. I define awareness fragmentation disorder as a lack of engagement or an imbalanced engagement with the multiple intelligences that we were given as human beings. And I know there are more than the 5 I'm naming now, because I know there's been a study of the multiple intelligences, but for easy access to conversation, the body, somatic intelligence, was associated with the gut brain. The heart intelligence, we all know now, it's associated not just with our emotions, but also our self-regulation capacity is really key. Our brain intelligence, which is more than just the linear brain, right? But the unlimited Buddha brain, which gives us access to levels of information that have to do with where channelers come from and all that. And then the soul intelligence, which I associate with our intuition, our preferences, our sexual identity, the intimacy of our soul, right? These are all, I believe, intelligences that run at different kinds of frequencies. And awareness fragmentation disorder happens when we're not engaged with even one of them or any of them, right? And that's probably 90% of the culture of the world is involved with the linear rational mind, certainly in developed countries. So now I want to pop completely to a non sequitur, which is going to tell you what happened to me during my accident. Because I was spared my life with the accident, but it was a death nonetheless. It was such a total death. I'm a very loyal man, and I lost my marriage. I had a 6-year-old daughter at the time. We had to navigate that. I lost my production company because I couldn't work at all for 6 months. It was massive. And it brought me face up with death, because Michael Stillwater had invited me to, what could we do for people facing loss? Well, that question came to me a month before the accident. And I literally asked myself before I went to bed at night, before the accident, what in me is going to have to die in order for me to bear the responsibility with nobility and artistry to serve people who are actually facing death, either literally or those who are attending those who are facing death. So this brings us to the question from the 5,000-year-old text. What is the most remarkable thing in all the world? And normally I would ask, shout out, what do you think the most remarkable thing in all the world is? And I don't have the ability to do that in this context. So, put it in the chat if you're on the Zoom, love, unity, connection, right? Well, the answer, paraphrased from the Bhagavad Gita, is the most remarkable thing in the world is that each of us will die, but no one ever thinks it will happen to them. Right. So I was in one of those experiences where the universe gave me this gift of a death without dying. And it gave me the emotional, neurological, spiritual, intellectual gift of having a kind of empathy for death without having to die that actually produced the music that came out of me. Because in my whole life of creating thousands of pieces of music, I have never written music from the place that music came from with graceful passages. It literally came out of me, first take. When I listened to the words, well, I'll tell you more about that later, because otherwise I'll know. I have quite a long presentation, and I hope you'll stay with me on this one. So that's when, after that death experience of the bicycle accident, this was my first mission. I want to help. If one person can be alleviated from the sorrow of loss that I had been enduring from all of that loss of my family, my marriage, my company, my body, my ability maybe to play the piano, then my life would be worth living. And that's what my mission was. So that's why I'm going to take you down this path first, because it is, the phrase was, death is the mother of all life, right? That's a very provocative statement. Death is the mother of all life. It's similar to all music comes from silence. And that's where the beautiful nesting power of the unitive field, silence, stillness, that's where all the music comes from. Similar, death is the mother of all life. So listen, I'm going to stop for a minute. Hold on. I have to do this. So I want to ask you to all close your eyes. If you are more audio driven, and if you love and you won't let the images interfere in your listening, which is hard to know, by the way, and that's one of the things I want you to be inquiring about, is if you feel like you're getting caught up in the images and it's lessening your ability to hear the alchemy between the words and the music, I'm inviting you to close your eyes and not look at the eye candy, because it'll be more powerful. If those of you who are real psychonauts want to make this even more powerful, imagine that someone is just giving you a terminal diagnosis. Now, this is an experiment in identifying where you are with regards to your relationship to what I call mortality awareness. I'm going to pause there. Where are you on the spectrum of accepting, in not just your linear mind, that you will disappear one day, but you have no idea how, when, or where it will happen? And that question that Carlos Castaneda said in his books with Don Juan is, you must live with death over your left shoulder at all times. So this is a great opportunity to actually notice where you are on the spectrum of mortality awareness. Here we go. This is 5 or so minutes. Breathe. Notice how the music is asking you to slow down. Let it slow you down. Breathe. Nice long breaths.
has ever prepared us for this experience. We think it's the end. No. It's another beginning. Another beginning. It's knowing that you're loved. Knowing that you're loved. It's not easy letting yourself be loved. Of course, we've learned to judge ourselves. And we're always judging ourselves. But I learned to listen, that I was loved. I was loved. And then I would forget that I was loved. Those were the most painful times for me. Forgetting that I was loved. So you've let yourself be loved while you've been here. And you've judged yourself. And you've forgotten that you were loved. And you became alone. But you will always be here. You are blessed. You are forgiven. You are an angel. You have to listen that you're loved. And you have to forgive all the time. Listen that you're loved. And forgive all the time. You are love. Farewell, my son. Farewell, my daughter. Farewell, my father. Farewell, my mother. Farewell, my sister. Farewell, my brother. Thank you for letting me love you. Thank you for letting yourself be loved. God bless you.
So just be with that experience right now in this collective on Zoom and in the room. Just allow yourself to feel whatever you feel. I'm going to read something that I wrote. And then if I had the kind of time, I might just create a little room. If I have someone on Zoom or in the room has a burning share that they can do within 2 minutes, I might ask just for that participation. So, but first, let me just read this. This experience, what even just watching versus listening, is a beautiful opportunity to see how different it is when we engage in external stimuli rather than dive into an intimate personal relationship with our inner experience. As someone that has fallen into the seduction to the external world, I've heard this thousands of times. And when I stop looking and I dive and feel the being, the universe in me that's actually experiencing it, it's a world of difference. It's the difference between being in me and not being in me, for me, right? So I'm just going to read something because the doorway to all of the work that I'm going to be sharing in the next hour was opened by the creation of Graceful Passages and that accident I shared, right? And that awakened me to the understanding around grief. And I'll talk about that later, but I want to read this. It's about, up until this point, we've been exploring what becomes possible when we're more regulated and present, which we're going to go into more deeply. But there's something we have to acknowledge. Most of us are not just overstimulated. We're carrying unprocessed emotional grief, losses that were never named, grief that was never given space to metabolize. When that happens, it doesn't disappear. It becomes tension and disconnection, quietly limiting our capacity for presence, connection, and unity. And I might add, an understanding on a visceral level of who we are and what our purpose is. We cannot sustain outer peace without cultivating inner peace. And we cannot cultivate inner peace without learning how to metabolize and process our grief. And all of us carry grief, loss, and trauma that we have not addressed since before childhood. Because when grief is allowed to be felt and processed, it softens the heart. And a softened heart is more capable of connection with everything, ourselves, the field, each other. So this is where music, I believe, becomes essential, because there are things the mind cannot process alone that in many ways music alone can help us feel and awaken and emulsify and transform. I just want to give room because I have more content than we have time. I'm summarizing 25 years of my life into this talk in a way. But is anybody, let's say first in the live, I don't know, it's harder because I don't know if we have a mic yet. So maybe just for my ease's sake, anyone on the Zoom call that has a burning share that they'd like to make this feel relevant to the room in a personal way. Very, very short. Anybody want to raise their hand? Barbara.
I've used graceful passages from the moment I met you, and for myself, I still weep when I listen to it. And for others who are leaving, and I use it. It is such a gift, and I'm so grateful. And I've sent it to so many people. And what I know is that I still haven't accepted all of the grief that I carry. And that has to be okay.
Yeah.
It just has to be okay rather than beat up on, I should have done it by now. So one
and
step at a time.
and just know that Barbara Legere is one of the most extraordinary and inspirational proponents of peace in the planet and works with mothers and children in the Ukraine. And I'd love you to put in the chat, Barbara, what the world is that people can learn more about, because she's
I
a
did.
she's a new thought minister of many, many years and she's a brilliant inspiration to my life. And I love her dearly. Thank you for what you share, Barbara. If is there, I'm a little reluctant to ask the room to speak because I haven't set up the clarity with Dan or Tom about how to get someone to say something in the mic. But what do you want to say, Dan or Tom? Is there one person who wants to share anything?
Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Is there someone?
One thing I can say is that I love Michael Stillwater. I play a lot of his songs. That's
Nice.
cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there any burning share for just a minute? Very short share?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. What's your name?
My name's Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Greetings. Thank you for being here. My share, I just want to, I think I just want to make, I was reflecting on the intelligences that you were talking about a little earlier. And the thing that came up for me is that it has to be experienced, not just you can't just understand it with your mind. You have to actually experience what it is we're talking about, or what the resonance. I mean, you have to like feel it resonating inside yourself for it to really take hold.
I love, boy, are you a shill, man? You're like the perfect segue to my next section. Yeah, exactly. Because thank you. I totally agree. And that's one of the reasons why music is so extraordinary, because it is something to be experienced. You can't think it, right? So thank you for that share. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, and I'm just so thrilled to be able to share. This is like the most, it's the first, like I said, it's the first time that I'm able to kind of put it all together in this way. Oh, did you have something you wanted to share? Who's that? Tom?
That's Tom.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Hey, Gary, thank you. This is wonderful. I think it was around 5 years ago when I got a download during the night one night about all kinds of, about an ontological download of a diagram of what was presented as the structure of creation. And part of what came through in that was that there are five most essential elements in creation, and those were first joy, which I laugh when the difference between watching New York traffic over the GW Bridge or whatever it was with the traffic noise versus listening to it when you're playing Ode to Joy is pretty strong, obviously.
But you're not going to tell me the five now because I don't have time for that, please. But tell me, well, please just say quickly.
The number is joy, autonomy, appreciation, geometry, and lastly, music.
Wow.
Music was presented as one of the basic elements of creation itself. That's what.
Can somebody write those five in the chat, please? Say it again.
Joy, autonomy, appreciation, geometry, and music.
I love that, Tom. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's
Yeah.
really beautiful.
Right.
Thank you. And sorry, please forgive me for rushing. I don't have the time now. We'll have time for more Q&A at the end. I'm going to really try to finish so we can have more time. So bear with me. Thank you. So we already went through what do you notice in this collective. That's a good question to ask when you're moved. What do you notice in you that happened? Did your heart get cracked open even a little bit? In this collective, what happened in the field that you're in with these people? Can you sense into how the room changed? Because in a way, we all got very naked in admitting that we're all going to die one day, because we accepted the fragility of that in a public environment. That's very powerful. And that's one of the reasons why I'm committed to creating these things called the conversation in cities in partnership with hospitals, to actually have conversations around letting letting it out of the bag in public conversations, that we're all going to go someday. And that changes the way we feel connected to each other. So this is what I said. I don't need to have a picture for it. Unacknowledged grief becomes symptoms. Great concept. Francis Weller, big shout out for one of the great writers about grief, Francis Weller, write him down. And so I said this, the greatest obstacle to our life's purpose and unity consciousness. We can't feel the flow of our purpose. If we don't feel that, we're not connected to the all that is. and the fear of death or risk, it becomes unprocessed grief, and that is a weight that slows our path down. So what if grief happens for us, not to us? And a slight self-promotion, if you go to u-awake.com, the definitive official workshop of Graceful Passages, the grief literacy workshop that is the most effective training for emulsifying grief that I know, that I co-created with Hope Fitzgerald. Please check it out, because we're going to be offering live workshops, and u-awake.com has all the information. So that's, what if it happens for us, not to us? How can we embrace our grief? And when we metabolize and integrate our grief. So here we go. So when we're vulnerable, vulnerability is the currency and the catalyst for true transformation. Brene Brown, I love you. TED Talk on vulnerability. She really helped me understand why I had such a rough childhood. It's because I never knew any other way than to wear my heart on my sleeve. And still, I'm an old man now, and I don't know any other way to be. But it's really saved me. It kept me young energetically, because I just never bought the culture's admonishment that I can't share my heart. And I think it's because the music kept me that way. But it's made me a really great example of, I'm sorry, I have all my problems as a man, trust me. But one superpower I do have is my capacity to be vulnerable and transparent. And I'm so grateful for it. So this is that wonderful quote. And she also said that vulnerability is the birthplace of our innocence, right? So I've covered a lot of this already. So I'm just going to go through this quick. Regulate, when we allow our vulnerability to be shared with another, not just alone, but with another, when two or more are present, right? Regulating nervous systems restore, parasympathetic nervous systems calm down. We start to feel a sense of belonging. And belonging, shout out to belonging, enables us to feel a deep connection to ourselves, those we love, and what matters most. And I might add, the unified field itself. It's the doorway to belonging. Vulnerability is so important. And again, what if music's deepest value has been hiding? And that's what I've been exploring for the last 30 years. How can music help us reclaim our humanity? So after the accident, I was faced with a very, very difficult decision. I had been defined by Emmy Awards and money and television commercials and feeding the commercial industry. I used to do Hidden Valley Ranch dressings and Gallo wine and IBM and Bank of America clients, ad agencies. I was a hired gun for creating the GDP or participating in it. And I suddenly realized that I had a choice to make after this accident. And after having created a doorway into understanding this relationship that grief had for our lives, or resolving grief had for our lives, I literally felt like this wayward traveler. I had a choice. I could either go to the world that really was unsustainable, that was destroying the earth because it felt that we had the dominion over earth and all life, or I could go towards the world in which healing, vulnerability, empathy, compassion, gratitude, community, sustainability, Native American values that honor the earth. I could go towards that by opening my heart and seeing where it led me. And that decision was made in 1998 when I decided to go 100% into the creation of Graceful Passages. So we're not lacking the intelligence for that path. We are lacking protocols for whole being integration of all our intelligences. And I know that music, the right music, and all the music-infused tools that you're about to see that I've explored with, is just one person's exploration, but it has a destiny that it can fulfill to help us reclaim our humanity. And that sounds very grandiose. So please forgive me for that. But what keeps me get up in the morning is when I've heard the phrase that our humanity is our competitive advantage for awakening ourselves and our true capacity in this AI, increasingly AI world, I mean it with every bone of my body. So my job became, after Graceful Passages became so successful, it's been experienced by 1 million people in the world, in reframing the fear and avoidance of death, dying, and loss into a radical gratitude for the precious gift that life is. And, I used to say, as a member of a Jewish, New York Jewish family that was very, very addicted to looking at life through the eyes of a suffering victim. And I love my family, don't get me wrong, but we all understand. And the Jewish faith doesn't have the only monopoly on feeling victimized, trust me. But I discovered that it wasn't about looking at the glass half full. It was about being grateful for the glass itself. So I started going on a walkabout, a journey. Where else can music bring greater heart, soul, and humanity in a way that will transform the way we approach the most important transitions of our lives? And that's what you're about to see, is my attempts at trying to offer musical tools to enhance our hearts harmonizing with our minds. All right. That's my commitment. I just love that I have the chance to share this with you. Thank you. So I'm just going to quote some of these things. You could just look at how we absorb wisdom. So here's the thing, is that I suddenly realized, well, if the intellectual mind was such a delusory and ill-equipped, such a limited way to understand or to feel or to absorb or experience the world, then what else is available to us that is being denied in our culture, that is causing the strife, the suffering, the planetary destruction? What else can make us awaken to all these other forms of knowing that are hiding underneath the dominance of the linear rational mind? And every one of my things I'm about to share with you are my attempts to explore that. So what I learned with Graceful Passages, just so you understand, is that Michael Stillwater and I and his wife went around and interviewed Thich Nhat Hanh, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Zalman Schachter, the leader of a beautiful humanitarian sect of the Jewish religion, the ecumenical director of the Vatican, all these amazing people. And then we did a version, well, you'll hear about it in a minute. And we asked them, if they were going to die tomorrow, what would they say to the person they most love in this world? And we didn't really know what we were doing, but intuitively looking back, what we discovered was the tenderness. It was sort of a version of my realization that vulnerability is the currency of transformation. Tenderness, risky tenderness, authentic tenderness is the place where healing happens. And when you get these well-known people who have been speaking publicly for decades, to ask them to get to their edge of their vulnerability, now that is interesting. I have now, you'll see, well, I'll tell you, I've recorded almost 140 wisdom keepers with that requirement. And I would often, how many people do these people face where you interview them and they say what they've always said to every podcast and radio interview and journalist in the world. And I say, thank you so much, but I'm looking for something deeper. It's almost like the Stanislavski method of sharing wisdom, being there in the moment. Give me an experience of talking to the person you love most in this world, if their life depended upon what you're about to say. And every one of these interviews I have on a hard drive is yet to be scored and edited, but they're the most extraordinarily intimate that you've ever heard these people ever speak. It's an amazing experience. Gene Houston, who used to say, if not you, who? And if not now, when? But then I'd say, Gene, we really want to hear what Gene Houston really feels when we want to get up in the morning and we've lost hope. What motherly comment can you offer to the part of us who's lost hope and we're in despair? And she spoke with a voice that no one in this world has ever heard before. And that's what I'm looking for, millions to actually fund the nonprofit that will enable me to find film composers who will score. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's this thing called Alchemical Wisdom. This is the organization that is housing the archetypal voices of these recordings. And I invite you to go to Global Wisdom Foundation and find out more. It's my life's legacy and Michael's and my dream to create a living library, which is taking these 140 interviews of 2 hours, it's almost 600 hours, and actually finding film composers who, because I couldn't do it in my lifetime alone, and to raise the millions it would need to set it to music as if it were a feature film. And that's what it is. So each of these voices are edited and scored the way a film would be scored. And that modality seems to allow us, check this out, to absorb the meaning of the wisdom in our hearts and souls before our minds can even understand it. That's what I know about wisdom, alchemical wisdom. It's the one thing. If you ask me what is the thing I want to leave behind as a legacy, this is it. The Global Wisdom Foundation and the alchemical wisdom modality. I believe, and I know it sounds like hubris, I believe it's a spoke in the wheel for the evolution and the salvation of the planet's humanity. It's a very, very bold statement, but I know it's true in my bones. Because music moves from formlessness to form, it profoundly impacts our nervous system. And I want to invite a new way of thinking about listening in the next few minutes. What if listening was a collective form of prayer, of unified collective prayer that allows us together to sense our unity consciousness as connected, interconnected at a profound level? So as you listen, I'm inviting you, when we listen to things now, I'm inviting you to sense not only your inner universe, but your ability to sense your connection to the unity consciousness, to the unified field. I'm asking you to listen on multiple dimensions, because there is something happening with listening when you bring your intention to that purpose. I hope this makes sense. It's hard to talk like this without feeling energetically there. So I'm going to take a break in a minute, so this is what I'm seeking now after Graceful Passages has been created. And my goal is to get that heard by 100 million people. If you even had 10 million people in the world know that they were going to die and be at peace with it, not just with their minds, but with their hearts and souls, what would that mean for our planet's ability to feel grateful for the preciousness of life itself? So then I thought, well, all right, continuing down that path, how can we hack the monopoly of the linear rational mind? So I came up with this idea, I call it a transformance. Because the time it takes to drop people in, everything I've done with Graceful Passages is anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, right? I even have a television show on Gaia TV, called Islands of Inner Peace, that attempts to do this with visual mediations. I call it wisdom films. But it was still too long. So it was like Campbell's Soup in 1903, to the innovation of taking Mama's soup and putting it in a can. What if we can condense it as a Trojan horse tool at the beginning of Zoom calls that drops people in so that their natural propensity to align with the power of spaciousness, beauty, wisdom, and vibrational frequencies of high natures awaken us to our natural ability to retain information better, not just with your linear mind, but with your heart, soul, body as well, for greater receptivity, retentiveness, presence, alignment, and collective unity. And I am going to offer right now, spontaneously, to the IONS chapter, one of our transformances for someone who would be willing, if you have Zoom calls, to experiment with this as an opening experience. And if you would be willing to give me the results of your testing, qualitative, on what happens. So I'm going to give you an experience of this. Imagine everybody's lining up for the opening of a Zoom call, and everybody's in their, and during COVID, everybody was in their jammies except for the shirt, and people were navigating their schedule, and they were overwhelmed, and the children were in the next room trying to get your attention, and we all know it, right? Well, we don't have to be in COVID for that. We're still very distracted when we get on a call, and often we're just neck up, intellectual only. So I want you to imagine we're at the beginning of a call and we experience this. This was created for my dear friend Ben Bowler and his massive organization, Unity.Earth, who I'm deeply connected to and considered one of the senior curators for that global organization. Here it is. Breathe.
You are invited to experience unity. It's time to put aside the differences that divide us. And embrace the beauty of each one of us being different, being unique, being ourselves. In the essence of who we truly are.
Bring your heart into this.
A beautiful array of human beings across the planet. So many different ways of being human. So let us get to know each other. Let's spend time with each other. Let's learn from each other. And let's open our hearts to each other. And let's find the unity that exists right in the middle of the richness of our diversity. We are human. We are unique. We are one.
Now let's all allow this to set us up for silence for even just 10 seconds. This is what its great purpose is. Just let's be quiet together. What did you feel? What are you experiencing inside of yourself? Are you aware of your interconnection to everyone around you? Can you breathe into that connection? How does that change you? Look at the faces around you in the room. Look in the faces on the Zoom screen. I love having faces. If you can, put your screen on. Just allow yourself to feel how do you feel now with regards to your awareness of our connection to one another? How more capable are you to feel empathy for the humanity of every person around here in this context? Has the needle for your empathy and your capacity for empathy moved at all intuitively? Can you feel it at all? You feel softened? Feel free to put in the chat. Many people who are very, before AI could do everything intellectual and linear and rational, basically that dominated everything, could be done in a minute. No one had the time for a 3-minute, 2.5-minute experience like that before a call. In fact, you can't do anything like that. You just got to go right to the tactical, got to solve the problem, and do the analytical, do the profit motive, whatever. How in God's name are we going to thrive, much less survive, if we don't have the time to recognize that there are intelligences and a way of knowing and sensing and feeling ourselves and each other that gives us a full, clearer picture of the mess that we're in and how we might be able to solve it by joining hearts, minds, souls, and bodies towards an end of actually giving us the world we have been given. How in God's name can we show up with only a 5th or a 10th or a 100th of who we are and expect results different than what we're getting now? I said that I had more content than I have time for. So forgive me if I fly through some PowerPoints, because I always underestimate, because I'm as guilty as all of everyone else that I'm saying. I'm the guy that needs this more than anyone I know. So because I think it's all about the information. I have all these slides, right? Well, I forgot the small piece called presence, called embodiment of heart and soul and body. I mean, trust me, the only reason I know about this is because I'm the one that needs it most. So I'm humbled by what it is that it offers, but I know in my bones that it's valuable. I know it now. I used to wonder, what am I going to do about this? So I'm just going to go on. So it's perfect. I had a little thing from Thrive, the movie, 2 movies. You check out the movies online called Thrive, but I don't have time for that. So here we go. I've been trying to have a regular meditation practice since I've been 18 years old. I was inducted into Zen Buddhism at 21. I did everything you can imagine, right? And the monkey brain of Gary Malkin has been untrainable until I went to Massachusetts instead of, because I arrived to move in Asheville, North Carolina, and I arrived the day before the hurricane, and the hurricane spit me out to Massachusetts. And Massachusetts taught me about insignificance, humility, solitude, silence, and spiritual practice, because nobody was there to tell me how wonderful I was. And I needed to be in a place where I didn't have any external validation. It was a fabulous experience. And I got to see how addicted I was to wanting to be loved from the outside world. It was a practice. And so I finally started my spiritual practice. But how many of you share with me that the moment you sit at the meditation cushion, you're really afraid of the existential emptiness? You're actually afraid of the silence. You're afraid of the lack of external stimulation. Well, this brings me to the next thing that I'm working on now. I wish I could see in a room how many, if I'm not the oddball, and I don't think I'm the only person, because I know now with MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and all the meditation practices and research that has gone on for the last 20 years, we all now know that mindfulness extends your life and the quality of your life, period. End of story. So we all want to have a contemplative practice, but so many of us confuse the emptiness and the silence and the stillness with the unlimited emptiness. Imagine my surprise when I started to explore this work to awaken my unity consciousness in the ways we're talking about. I suddenly realized it was an unlimited fullness, and it prevented the ability for there to ever be another pregnant pause in my life or fear of the unknown and the emptiness. So I'm developing this method. I'm playing with the idea of calling it the Haven method, where stillness learns to live inside. But it's basically, if everything in medicine is about titration, if everything in nature is about titrating is incremental change. Like when you're taking cortisone, you have to take it and then titrate down. When you take GLP-1, you titrate up. You titrate. Nature in its natural, aside from storms and earthquakes and everything like that, everything in life happens slowly, right? So what if we titrated our capacity to awaken to the unlimited fullness that it actually is? So I'm going to play you a track that is this. And this is one of the 100 tracks I now have, really 50, because not all of them are as spacious as this. But just listen for a minute and imagine if this was a process that entered three-week periods, let's say, where you get accustomed to spaciousness in a beautiful way that isn't fearful, that isn't frightening. Listen for a minute. Allow yourself to stay with it. Just listen and be with yourself. Breathe. Feel your unlimited presence inside you. Feel the thread of the music holding you in a silent embrace of beauty. Now, in the interest of time, the other thing that this is used for is the alchemical wisdom modality of speaking with another or a family or a group, where the music tunes you to that which wants to be said from your heart, body, mind, and soul, rather than your ego, rather than your linear mind alone. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm harmonizing with the music, and I'm allowing myself to speak as I'm listening to my heart wanting to speak, rather than letting the runaway train of my mind take over my contact with my heart. Does that make sense? When you feel how the music starts to soften you and slow you down, because the part of us that thought there was existential emptiness and aloneness was incorrect. And you start to awaken to a benevolent universe that wants to walk you home to yourself. For those of you who, like me, have struggled, we titrate our experience with spaciousness, with this kind of beauty. So can you see how if we can start with something that stretches our ability to be present, after thinking that existential emptiness and loneliness was unlimited isolation, and suddenly you were invited Many people have said to me, someone once said to me, that most music has the intuitive imprint of a composer who wrote the music. And if it could speak, if we could anthropomorphize music, that kind of music, which is 99% of all music, would say, listen to me. Of course, the composer wrote something to be shared, right? Well, what I've been told is that that kind of music you just heard, it basically says, listen to you. It invites you into you. I would love you to put in the chat whether you agree with that. And now the next thing I came up with, because the time is getting short and I want to make sure I convey this one too, is I was asked to speak. I'm sorry if I'm moving fast, but I want to create some room and it's getting close to the end. I want to make sure we have some questions. So I came up with this idea that we've all heard the phrase carpe diem, but Brene Brown wrote a book called Atlas of the Heart. And she said that everything in our culture is reducing our ability to experience emotions, except in very basic primary colors, one or two forms of anger, one or two forms of love, one or two forms of blah, 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 right? Well, what if we allowed ourselves in short bursts to stretch our ability to go with the feeling that music awakens that comes up in my film scores? These two I'm going to play you is based on something I wrote for the movie Thrive. And we actually allow ourselves to stretch and expand our emotional range in a way that changes our access to ending the monopoly of the linear rational mind. So check this out. In this moment, I want you to close your eyes and think about somebody or something or a project that you want unlimited positive outcomes for. Imagine, feel, dream, and believe in unlimited positive outcome. And as you listen to this music, allow your body and your inner cells to deepen its capacity to go on the ride that the music takes you. Are you ready? I hope so. Close your eyes, feel the project. Keep your eyes closed. Receive the benefits of the practice of listening as collective prayer and collective sending out to beyond the time-space continuum that send it out to the outcome so that it may be so. Keep your eyes closed and now experience, for a minute, I just want you to see these pictures for a minute. Hold on. I just put some pictures. I wanted to awaken an experience of empathy for people that are less fortunate. Just so close your eyes. You don't need the pictures for that. And here's another example. Where is it? There we go. Here we go. You notice how I let the music, I was going to fade it out, but you notice how I let the music go to the very end? It's really important. I have much more content than I can do, so I'm going to get off this for a minute. Just the summary of that experiment that I call the Haven, the Senti Diem. Emotional rage correlates to wellness. Regulation requires awareness. Presence requires regulation. So I'm going to, I just want to glance quickly at what I'm missing out on because I'm not going to be able to share the rest of the talk, which is fine. But I'm going to, yeah. So I basically, over the next part of my talk, I was going to mention the places where I've done this work for helping caregivers. And we're about to be in a whole new initiative with a world-class CEO of a 30-year CEO of a hospital. We're looking at a human coherence project that we're working on to address the crisis of the nursing exodus that's going to, and the big, beautiful bill that's taking $1 billion away from Medicare that will close 200 to 300, 400 hospitals in rural America over the next 5 years. So I was going to tell you a little bit about that. I was going to tell you a little bit about another project we did. But the one thing I must say is this one I'm going to share quickly because I would be remiss if I didn't share with you that this is the kind of the capstone of everything I've ever done. And I'm just going to just share it with you because it's so important to me. We launched the idea of a ceremonial entertainment at Grace Cathedral last September that combined wisdom keepers, alchemical wisdom, poets, singer-songwriters, and we did a pre-concert workshop on grief literacy, and it was a phenomenal success. And we're now wanting to raise $30,000 to create a city activation kit that will become a short film for film festivals and a sizzler reel to present to mayors and leaders in communities across America to raise the frequency of engagement and end the, above the toxic divisiveness of our culture and end the cancel culture and invite differences to celebrate our unity as a human family. I please don't let this, write down if you can, globalwisdomfoundation.org/we rise as one. And if any of you are one of those people who have money to contribute to a unifying cause that is the most beautiful thing I've ever done in terms of an outreach, this is very important to me. But just a way to sum up for my final sum, music doesn't create unity. It awakens the beauty, wonder, and awe where unity becomes possible. And the ultimate goal of every piece of work that I've ever done is to get us to the highest states of human experience, which is feeling with every level of our being joy and gratitude for being alive. And this is my soon to come website. Portalsofawe.com is not yet ready, but it will be. And yeah, I think I'm just going to give you my closing comment, my closing speech, and then we have questions. So what if we were more sensitive than we've been taught? Not fragile, but responsive. What if each of us is already an instrument capable of tuning ourselves like a tuning fork to what we are resonant with? Because when we are fragmented, we transmit fragmentation. When we are settled, we transmit coherence. And that changes how we relate, how we speak, how we listen, how we show up. Music, when designed with intention, can help us return to this place, not by forcing anything, but by creating the conditions where coherence becomes the natural expression of our humanity. From coherence comes connection, from connection, compassion, and from compassion, the possibility of feeling our interconnectedness, not as an idea, but as a lived experience. So perhaps the invitation is simple: to become more aware of what we are resonating with and what we are transmitting. Because whether we realize it or not, we are shaping the field that we share. And if that's true, we can become more conscious human tuning forks, and together create a world that feels as good as we know it can be. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you all today. And I'm sorry.
It was amazingly, Gary. It was amazing. You. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Very useful.
Oh, Ned, so there's a question here. Yes, please.
Right. One thing that your talk brought to my mind, and I'm older than most people here, so I'm not sure whether they experienced the same experience I did growing up. But I grew up with the concept of being taught only the strong survive. And
Oh, say that again. Only what?
only the strong survive.
All right.
I heard that song the other day, actually. And my parents never showed emotion, taught me never to show emotion. I never saw them hold hands, kiss. I never heard the word love. And I learned it well. And when my father died, I did not cry. He would have been proud of me, I guess. Anyway, a number of years later, a good friend of mine died, and I allowed myself to cry. And from then, that was the transformation you've been talking about. I don't know whether this was just my culture here in Richmond or whether it was throughout the country, or I hope the rest of the country, if they did believe in this, I hope they've been transformed, because I think the world would be a lot better place if we all had empathy and realize we're all human, we all have vulnerabilities. We can show others our vulnerability and accept other people's vulnerabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, that is true for so many, the majority, right? Thank you for sharing that. What is your name?
My name is Wilma. Do you first want to do somebody online or?
We'll do 2 and 2. Let's see if we can pull that off.
Okay. Okay. I want to thank you because today I asked a question and you gave me the answer and I walked in late. So I'm sorry about that. I had to have blood taken, so I could not pass that up. But one of the questions would then be, this is very emotional. I am going to have a tattoo on my right shoulder because my oldest son died. I have his ashes, and to make the story very short, I want to put some of the ashes in the ink because my kids want me to have a vial with the ashes around my neck. Wow. And I can't do it because I'm like, what if I forget it somewhere? Right. So over there is the solution. Well, I can't handle needles. So Lakeside Avenue, I'm driving there yesterday, and I see a tattoo parlor, and I'm like, okay, let's check what the environment is in Virginia, because in North Carolina, it's outlawed. You can't do it. Like, it's not allowed, but wow. It is possible. So my question is then, because I was in that office, and they played the most atrocious, aggressive music. And I literally said to him, if I come on Wednesday, you have to play different music.
Good for you.
Because I was like, I can't handle this. And now I know why. Because I would be hyper from it and, like the whole thing. This morning, somebody says, well, that's not a Christian thing to do, to get a tattoo. And I'm like, you're not listening to me. You're not getting why I want to do this, whether it's Christian or not. Yeah, well, Jesus never talked about tattoos. I thought I mean, come on. But you can't argue with somebody like that. You just have to let it go. But I did put the question out to the universe, what music should I play? So when I was listening to your, a project that you couldn't finish, or like that is coming up, that I was like, whoa, this definitely answers that, because how am I going to pull myself through that? And the answer that came is my son's song is Coldplay. Now I can't come up with the title. It doesn't matter.
Yellow.
No, that's not it, but okay. You're good. They have quite some songs that fix me. That's the song he, we played for his celebration of his life. Anyways, is there any other suggestion that you can say that I should say to them, play this?
Yeah, yeah.
Can I
So,
find that online? So that would help everybody. That's why I'm asking this question.
well, thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to share, first of all.
Yeah, and look at me doing all this.
I love that. Also, one of the slides I didn't have a chance to share was the word cymatics is the sound of the science of sound being made visible. And we are 80% water. So when you see water being moved by beautiful music versus aggressive music, the aggressive music is very, very ugly shapes in music or sand and or oil. And in beautiful music, it's beautiful sacred geometric shapes, right? Well, that's in our bodies, right? So when you hear the phrase garbage in, garbage out, not only with TV, but with audio, this issue is such a big complicit issue for what's creating chaos in our culture. So I just want to acknowledge your sensitivity, thanks to your love for your son. So yes, I was rebelling against streaming sites because of how unfair they are to the creator. They're destroying music creators' ability to make a living. But on streaming sites, you ask for music, Gary Malkin. There's a lot of music that's very, very suitable for that experience.
Gary
Autumn
Malkin.
stillness, summer peace, things like that you can find, and then you start to get tuned into the kind of music that slows you down and makes your heart open, and start to notice, does this music help me or hurt me? And that's what you should do in your life besides the tattoo parlor in general, right? And there's a lot. Max Richter, the score to Hamnet. Oh my God, not all of it, but most of it is amazing. Max Richter is an amazing artist. I love him. So that's my answer. And we have to end. Unfortunately, we have time for a call from somebody on Zoom. Who was it that wanted to? Is there anybody on Zoom that wanted to speak? Thank you. And
Shalom. Gary.
shalom.
Your presence helped me to answer a question that I didn't know how to ask. And the question was, what is the most powerful number in the world?
You mean like mathematical number?
Yeah.
Well, I know what I feel because I've done some research into this. And in fact, where is this question coming from?
From my higher self.
All right, well, this is a metaphysical question, and
Yeah.
it's arguable what it is, but I've done research because I know of a man that created a new tuning system based on numerologically every note on the piano tuned to a number that was a frequency that's divisible by 9, because he researched that the number 9 is the most frequently mentioned number in all spiritual texts on the planet. Now, I'm not interested in arguing. He's done a lot of research, but he created a musical system, tuning system based on that called Divine 9 Music. And I've actually created one out of the 40 improvisations I did with this new tuning system. I haven't had the money to finish the mixing of the rest of the music, but there's one piece called All Is Well that it will be online someday soon. So I actually have experienced what happens, and it has this radical experience to me, and it brings you into deep inner connection with your inner soul, your equanimity and within. But I'm fascinated that you'd ask the question, what emotional meaning does this, or what purpose is this question for you?
It seems to me that the number 1 has a mystical unity, as does 0, both of which comprise the signals that we use for computer technology, on, off, on, off. So the 1 and the 0 are perhaps mirror images, or the transparency of all that is. I don't know.
Well, that's a rabbit hole that you are invited to go down and share with us what you've discussed. Clearly, based on my talk, I'm most interested in unity consciousness as my reason for doing everything in my life. So I agree with you around the 1. I'm afraid I have to end. But I just want to say, Tom, thank you for the timing of this invitation because, like I said, I haven't had the chance to unpack the compression that required for me to do the 15-minute talk for TEDx. And this has given me such a beautiful opportunity to fan out with the understandings that I've developed in the last year, pretty much, on top of everything I've done in the last 30 years. So thank you for that privilege. And